Okay, this next one I had just kind of seen in passing and didn't really know much about it. This is from Arrow Films. This is Sailor Suit and the Machine Gun. So this is from 1981, and this is kind of sold as like a Yakuza parody. And I've seen a handful of Yakuza movies from the 70s, you know, the Battle Without Honors, the new Battle Without Honors, those kind of movies like that. And I've enjoyed every single one of them. They do bleed together a little bit, kind of like when you watch a lot of like samurai or gangster movies or anything like that. If you watch a lot of the same genre, you have a lot of the same actors popping up. This one definitely stands out being completely different. The idea is insane, but yeah, it's played fairly straight. Although there is a touchy like a cuteness to it, I would say, but there is some sentimentality and some emotional level. So what we have here is a Yakuza leader is dying, and he runs this gang. He tells his four kind of guys that I want you to put my nephew in charge. And this meanwhile, we have this young girl, the student, very innocent, very nice. Her who hangs out with like her best has like three best friends who are boys, who are always kind of chasing after her, and essentially her father has died, who happens to be that Yakuza leader's nephew. So he was involved in some shady stuff possibly, and what happens is this young woman comes to live with her and says, I was a friend of your father's, and she seems a little off, and they start a relationship. But then the four Yakuza people come and they realize that our gang's going to end, and we have to die on like kind of like a you know, an honor system if you don't take over the gang, because although your father was next in line, you're the next in the lineage or whatever. So she reluctantly agrees because these men are going to die in a blaze of glory. And throughout the movie, she kind of learns who they all are. And there's like four of them, and they all kind of establish their characters and get to know her and get her closeness. And she has to go among the Yakuza ranks and the big bosses and everything. It creates awkward situations where they belittle her and all that kind of stuff like that. In the extended version, there's actually an attempted rape at her and on her and stuff like that. And that extended version seems to be the scenes are longer, and then there's a couple other scenes that are added in, the one I just mentioned and stuff like that. So it seems to be have a little bit of a darker touch. But so like really there's like a lot of relationship between her and the Yakuza men, and forming a relationship and a bond with all of them. And these four already had that bond. And when people start to die within the movie, right before they usually die, they have these like touching moments where you get like kind of a look into them, and you get to know them, which I kind of appreciated, although it becomes kind of telegraphed who's going to die next after a while. But I do enjoy seeing characters I really enjoy in kind of these Japanese gangster flicks. I will think of Katano in some of his gangster flicks. I think that they established the characters very well. What is that, Sonatine? Before they died, I really felt genuinely heart like gut punched when, and I did this one too. There's this moment that reminds me of kind of the scene in Young Guns when Charlie visits the prostitute, and he says, "Ma'am, I just want you to hold me," and it just like shows this like this kind of innocence to him, or that one could possibly, you think maybe that it actually is his mother, but you see this innocence to it, that character, and something like that happens in here too. Although it does seem a little bit more rapey in this one, I would say that I don't think that was the intent exactly, but I think the intent was more for the innocence quality, and I thought that was really touching. A couple moments like that in here. There is some when the way the action shot. It's not. I think that anybody who had some hangups on this movie, it would be probably when there's some action and some really cool scenes and some good bad guys, of course, some great bad guys, especially this horrible villain in a wheelchair who's like performing like organ harvesting and stuff. He's just a monster. He tells this great story involving a landmine, but just when the action, there is good action, but it's not like an all-out revenge or bloodshed ending. And I think that stuff, the way it's shown and shot, would be a little disappointing to some people, although it is very competently shot and entertaining. And the end has like this really nice touch, and it comes together with it, I think so. With the kind of the voiceover and all that stuff, I thought was kind of beautiful. There's a great theme music to the movie that will get stuck in your head, and I quite enjoyed that as well. This one I thought was really good, and I really enjoyed it, and it was different. They call it a Yakuza parody, or kind of playing on those, but it also can stand on its own. You know, it's not just like a parody movie that I'll be talking about later in this video, Silence of the Hams or something. It's not that, okay? It's playing on the tropes and making it and doing its own thing and being a genuinely good movie at the same time. Oh, I should mention some of the features on here because there is a couple on here too. So, yeah, besides the original, the theatrical, there's the extended version which runs close to 2 hours and 10 minutes, I believe. So it's quite long. The other version is just under 2 hours. So then we have Girls, Guns, and Gangsters, Sheena, Soma, and Sailor Suit and Machine Gun, an exclusive new 50-minute documentary featuring actor Akira Umato, film scholar Chika Kinsasinto, Soma biographer Tetsuo Komura, and Sailor Suit assistant director Koji Inyokido discussing the making of the film, its director, and its legacy. Yes, and this movie actually, I think it spawned two different TV series and possibly a movie made in 2016. So kind of the same story. So yeah, it does have quite a bit of following to it and a legacy. So yeah, that is Sailor Suit and Machine Gun, or is it Sailor Suit and Machine Gun? I want to make sure. I want to make Sailor Suit Girl and Machine Gun. So Sailor Suit and Machine Gun. Yeah. Okay, the next 1981 movie is The Island of the Evil Spirits. Now, this is a Japanese horror film, and in reality, like from 1980, you look at it, there's not that many Japanese horror films. There's a lot of Pinky that kind of cross into horror, Pinky violence, all that kind of stuff like that, Nakatsu movies, but they're not really like making horror films like ghost stories and stuff like that. Now, South Korea was, but Hong Kong is. A lot of these, Indonesia is. They're all making them. But Japan wasn't making them so much, which is kind of crazy. Thailand even, but so Japan, Taiwan too, but Japan wasn't. And they had those Nakatsu movies, but they weren't necessarily horror films. They had stuff like Virus, which is borderline horror. This one is horror, I think. It's got a mystery to it, but it's again borderline horror. It's got a crime kind of style to it. Now, there's some supernatural aspects to it, and this is The Island of the Evil Souls, and this is again over 2 hours long. So I was putting it off watching it. So, but right when I started, I was like, "Oh, this is really well made." It's by a director that has a lot of respect. Never did any other horror films, from my understanding. Now, getting into this plot would be very hard to describe absolutely everything that happened because it would take 20 minutes to describe all the plot, and I don't want to spoil everything for you. But in the very beginning, it opens up with this band, and it's 1980, and it's the death of John Lennon. We're hearing some like Beatles or a cover of a Beatles song, and he says, this song brings me back to a time when I was a hippie and I listened to this music, and we kind of flash back and we go to this story, 1969, on this island that this has this elaborate backstory of how this island got formed, why these people running this island, all this kind of stuff here. And what happens is it brings these detectives to the island because someone was washed up on shore, someone was murdered on the mainland, and someone was been murdered on this island. So all these things are bringing these people here, and there's a giant festival going on at the same time. What you're going to figure out is that this involves twins. This involves maybe some, premonitions, some kind of evil spirited stuff, and some traditions and shame and hiding, all these kind of stuff here. Right when I was watching this, I was like, is this Sisters? This feels a lot like Brian De Palma's Sisters from '73, I think. And it does share some similarities to Sisters, but it also shares a lot of similarities to a lot of other Japanese kind of detective style stories or procedurals. But this is a little bit different than your typical procedural because we have so many characters, so many sets of brothers and sisters. We have the brothers that's father is missing. We have the twin sisters. We have the twin sisters from the previous, and one of them is completely mad. We have all these things going on here, right? A lot of this duality and things like that. It's a nice, gorgeous location. The backstory is interesting. The kind of the culture is interesting. It's not overly violent, but there's a couple scenes that are pretty violent. Somebody is killed and they're eaten by a pack of dogs afterwards. Wild dogs on the island. There's a great image of a dog running with a hand in its mouth, and everybody's chasing him and trying to get the hand out of its mouth and everything. But the Island of the Evil Spirits is really well done. I mean, and like, I thought it was well acted. There's a lot of actors that you'll recognize from this movie that pop up in other things. There's, like I said, all the cops are recognizable. Interesting lead guy here trying to figure everything out. I would recommend this one. Also, it ends with Beatles cover "Let It Be," and it worked and touching. But this is a good one. This is kind of a little gem, maybe a little gem that not many people have seen. The Island of the Evil Spirits, Japanese film. And I know there's some more Japanese ones too, I think, this year that I'll be checking out. But I'm kind of interested as we go through the 80s when that big Japanese boom hits. Is it like Sweet Home? I know that one comes up. And then when we start getting to more, like by the mid to late 80s, there's dozens and dozens of these direct-to-video crazy movies like the guinea pig movies. But like right now we're in that Nakatsu world. And eventually we'll get to Hisayasu Sato. So like we're going to get into a lot of weird shit later on in Japan. But right now Japan's output is not huge for 1981, 1980. And Hong Kong is there, and I know that they go for a couple more years with their horror films, but they start to slow down too, from my understanding. Then they probably pick back up in the late '80s, early '90s. So it's just interesting watching the trajectory of all these countries, where their outputs were in different years. But anyways, this one's good. I recommend The Island of the Evil Spirits.